Well, hello, Joe Hyde, publisher and founder of San Angelo Live. I have a very special guest today. We have a race for Texas Attorney General. The current Attorney General, Ken Paxton, is going to run for U.S. Senate against John Cornyn, and we have a lot of candidates for Attorney General, and I am very honored to have Mayes Middleton. Now, I'm going to give you a little bit of what I know about Mayes and let him fill in the pieces. He is a current Texas State Senator. Before that, he was he worked in the Texas House, so he has a lot of legislative experience. He also runs a big company down there in Galveston, Texas, South Texas Oil
and gas company.
So tell me
ranching,
more,
farming.
Yeah, tell me more about yourself.
So I grew up on the Gulf Coast guy. Family's been in the ranching and farming business my whole life. I'm also in the oil and gas business as well. So Texas is energy dominance. Went to UT Law. I'm a practicing oil and gas attorney, and I got elected to the Texas House in 2018 as chairman of the Texas House Freedom Caucus. Now I'm in the Texas Senate, and when I ran for Senate, President Trump endorsed me and said my conservative record was second to none. I was also chairman of the Texas House Freedom Caucus, and look, from day one, always been ranked as one of the most conservative members, top two most conservative members in the House, the top two most conservative members in the Senate. And that's not that hard to do. You just do what you said you were going to do. And ever since then, it's about service, public service, and not self-service. And you'll see I don't have a gold pin on.
No flag either.
I don't have the gold pin, and look, I don't believe in it because that pin belongs to the district. It belongs to my constituents. That's who every district belongs to. And at the end of the day, I give away my salary. I reject the pension. I reject the health care. I don't take the state license plate. I don't take the lobbyist NFL tickets or the lobbyist ski trips. I don't take anything.
You get NFL tickets as a senator?
They do offer lobbyist NFL tickets. They do. And really? I give those away. I do not take those. I reject those.
So this guy is someone to know if you want to get an NFL game because he gets a lot of them.
Well, you know what? I decided to take nothing from this job because that's the goal, is to advance conservative values and go fight for them. That is my calling. This is not a job. This is a calling for me. And that's a lot like our president right now. President Trump doesn't take anything from the job. I'm only here to fight for the conservative values that we believe in. That's it.
Okay, so Texas Attorney General, the office itself, a lot of people don't know what it does and how it impacts their day-to-day life. It's one of the statewide elected offices we have. So what do you think the most important thing that the Texas Attorney General does for the state of Texas and for the voters out there?
So it is not just the chief protector and defender. It is the chief enforcer of our laws and Constitution. But not only that, that office is the sword and the shield for everyone in the state, especially those who can't defend themselves, and the values that make us great in Texas. And look, I'm not just going to enforce the law. I'm not just going to protect and defend it. I'm going to use that office to advance the conservative movement. And you think about the things that the AG does. It's got 750 lawyers. It's got 4,000 employees. So I do think it's very important to have someone running that office that is signed the front of a paycheck like me, that knows where the buck stops, because you're setting the conservative agenda for the entire state. You are the leader. You hire the best talent. And look, here's some of the things that are top of the issues here for not just our state, but for America. Border security. I mean, we know how important that is. Border security.
What can the Texas Attorney General do? I mean, border security is primarily a federal option or federal responsibility, and we want the feds to spend money on border security.
We do want them to pay for it, but we have tools in the toolbox here. Here's one of them. So we need to make sure that we enforce our ban on sanctuary cities. That is Attorney General enforcement, and what that is zero tolerance for those that are in the way of President Trump's deportation agenda and border security agenda. And what are the tools that the AG has?
Which cities are sanctuary cities in Texas?
Well, normally it's George Soros cities, right? So normally it's a city that has a mayor.
Austin, Houston.
Yes, Travis County, Bexar County, Dallas County, El Paso. You see it across the state. It's not just them. I mean, I have heard stories of other counties and other cities that are essentially getting in the way of our border security laws. And the Attorney General has the power to enforce that ban on sanctuary cities and subject those that are in the way to three things: civil penalties, criminal penalties, and removal from office, right? I mean, these are strong tools for enforcement, and we've got to have zero tolerance for this because we cannot have anyone in the way of that deportation agenda because it is about keeping our families safe. You know, I've got 4 little ones. My wife and I are blessed to have 4 kids, 11, 8, and 4, 3 boys, 1 little girl. And my goal is to make Texas the safest state in America to live and raise a family, period.
And I think that's important, is the safety of your community. I mean, for example, I was listening to a podcast, I believe it's the All In podcast, and they're talking about with a guy from California. He's a multi-billionaire from California. He was a land developer in LA, and he was talking about saying that California should be the safest, most wonderful place to live.
Rick Caruso, yeah.
Yeah, they should, but they're not.
They're
because
They're
of
not.
the human capital that's come in there to lead California has basically made it not desirable to live there. You know, you have homeless people downtown LA
Right.
and things like that. Have you seen problems? I mean, you've been around the state, particularly in the southeast, you know, Houston to Austin to San Antonio. Have you seen problems like that you think the Attorney General could address? You know, homelessness, things like that.
Absolutely. You know, tough on crime, law and order is America first. I want to start a division in the AG's office devoted to rooting out cartels and organized crime. We don't know what got into this country in the last 4 years, but it's up to us to fix it. And I think that division in the AG's office that I want to start will be critical to that. Not only that, corruption. I mean, we just talked about the blue counties that, you know, George Soros helped elect, like Lena Hidalgo in Harris County. And I represent part of Harris County, one of the most corrupt and incompetent county judges Texas has ever had. I want to start an anti-corruption division in the AG's office to go after that waste, fraud, and abuse, because it's not enough to just take it out of the budget. We need to hold those accountable that are committing the waste, fraud, and abuse against taxpayers. And it's not just her. You think about George Soros himself. I want to investigate George Soros in that division and what he's done to our state, whether that's funding the rioters or electing those to office like Lena Hidalgo and district attorneys that don't enforce our laws, because our laws and our Constitution, those are not suggestions.
All right, let's talk about some difficult subjects. You're in the Senate. We had Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton faced impeachment, and kind of go through your thought process on what happened there as far as the last Attorney General. I mean, I know, you know, we all know how the whole Senate, all Republicans in the Senate voted to acquit, I guess, except
No,
for two.
there were two. Yeah, there were two that voted to convict.
So what was going on there?
So I voted to quit on every last charge. And look, the Attorney General has done a great job fighting for our country, fighting against Joe Biden, and as we're seeing lately, fighting against local government that is not enforcing the laws that we're passing in Texas. So I voted to quit on every last charge of impeachment. Of course, that was the House that brought those charges. But at the end of the day, that's what this office is. This is the sword and the shield for our state. This is how we enforce the conservative values and the conservative laws that we passed in the legislature. And for the past 7 years, I've been writing these laws. I've been crafting them. I've been fighting for them in the House floor. I've been fighting for them on the Senate floor. And who better to enforce them as Attorney General than someone that was on the ground floor writing them and defending them already. So I'm ready on day one to defend these conservative laws that we know are going to make Texas the safest and most conservative state in America.
One of the things that we need in this state very desperately across the country is we need voter and ballot integrity. And one of the things that Ken Paxton's been very outspoken about is that, in fact, he saw what was happening prior to the 2020 election and actually warned Trump about it. He called him up and said, hey, this is going to happen. And I believe there were 12 lawsuits he had to win. And if you lost one of them, we probably would have lost Texas. So talk about, I mean, I've seen voter fraud in person when I was writing the news in Del Rio, Texas. I know how the vote harvesting works. Kind of talk about that. And also, I guess I'm gonna make it simpler. In 2021, Court of Criminal Appeals, which is one rung below the Texas Supreme Court, and they're the highest criminal court. They said that the Texas Attorney General can't criminally prosecute voter fraud. How are you going to work with voter fraud and making sure that our elections have integrity?
So that was a bad decision by the Court of Criminal Appeals, and we all know this. One illegal vote cancels out your legal vote, and that's why election integrity is so important. We need to make sure that only legally qualified citizens are voting. So I asked Governor Abbott to add to the special session call a bill, so the ability for the AG to prosecute election-related crimes. He did add it. I was very grateful for that. We passed in the Senate. We passed in the House. The governor has signed it. So now the AG's ability has been restored to go prosecute election-related crimes. And the reason why this is so important is, do we really believe that a George Soros-elected DA is going to prosecute voter fraud? No, nobody believes that. So you have to have this ability for the AG to prosecute. So here's step 2, and here's my plan with this. We need a standalone election integrity division in the AG's office that has law enforcement powers and the ability to respond rapidly, because we know when they're stealing elections, they're not going to go tell us. They're going to go raise their hand and say, oh, by the way, here's 100,000 stolen votes, right? They're not going to do that. But that's why this is so important to have that tool in the AG's office and that ability to respond with law enforcement powers and be able to prosecute when the local DA, usually a George Soros DA, will not prosecute.
Okay, so let's say you win this Republican primary and you're facing a Democrat challenger. His answer to your voter integrity thing is going to say, well, Paxton really only prosecuted or only was looking at 13 votes, total, because that's all he could, that's all that was presented, where he could file charges on. That's not enough, is what they're saying. You're going after something that's not there, because our elections do have integrity. How would you answer that?
Oh, it is there. I represent part of Harris County, and we saw in the 2022 election, they actually went beyond voter fraud, election fraud. It was actually voter suppression. So what they did is they shorted ballot paper to Republican precincts, and I think that cost the Republican candidate for county judge her race. It cost us a lot of the judicial races. But the Democrats' argument is always the same on stuff like this. It's like, I've authored the bill and passed the bill to kick men out of women's sports. I also authored and passed the bill to stop men from going into women's private spaces. And they say, well, it's not very many examples. It's like, basically, they're saying, oh, a little bit of murder is fine. We'll put up a little murder, A little bit of voter fraud is okay. We don't need to worry about that. No, the right answer and the right number for that is 0. Mm-hmm. 0 is the right number, because we don't know. A lot of these elections are very close. I have a friend in the state house, Briscoe Kane. He won by 21 votes.
He's the short guy, right?
Briscoe's a little shorter than me. He wears a cowboy hat sometimes. Yeah. But look, 21 votes is close, and that could be easily stolen when you think about numbers like that. And that's a 200,000 person district.
Right.
And then you look back in the 2000 presidential election, it wasn't much, the difference between Al Gore and George W. Bush. I mean, it didn't take a lot,
right.
So when it counts a lot. And that's why we need to make sure the number is 0.
Okay. All right. What else, as far as the actions of the Texas Attorney General? I know that they do child support, for example. I mean, if someone is required to pay child support, they're going to garnish their wages.
Right. That's an important division. Yeah. Very important.
The other thing is they always, you talked a little bit about the little guy. For example, you have a large corporation from out of state or something like that, yeah, who's charging people money that they shouldn't have to pay, and it might be a cell phone kind of thing, or it might be a cable bill, or it might be something like that. How do you feel about consumer protection?
That is incredibly important in the AG's office, protecting those that can't protect themselves. I see it firsthand, in my district on the Gulf Coast. After a hurricane, for example, there's disaster price gouging. The AG enforces that. It is very important because, look, I mean, you see someone who just lost their home and someone's trying to charge them $500 for, 12 bottles of water. That is outrageous. That is fraud. And look, I've already been in this fight. I fought the big soda lobby and won, and passed the bill that kicks soda and candy and sweetened beverages out of the food stamp program. They really fought hard against that.
So you were for kicking out the soda from the food stamp program?
I authored and passed the bill to do it.
You know that I'm going to tell you. I got to thank you for that, because when you're in line and it's hard to earn money. And you're in line and you're paying off your debit card, or you have cash you got to pay, or you got to write a check for that groceries. You see someone in front of you with 4 cases of Coca-Cola, and you're going, and then they put it on a Lone Star card. You're like, really? And I'm paying for that. I'm paying for that too.
You are, because we know this. Taxpayer-funded junk food turns into taxpayer-funded health care. Mm-hmm. And you can do whatever you want with your own money. You can. But this is taxpayer money.
Right.
And it doesn't even satisfy the purpose of the program. So the SNAP program, the food stamp program, says nutritious food essential to health and well-being. Well, is candy and soda essential to health? No. And you'll be shocked to hear this, but the American Heart Association opposed my bill to take candy and food stamps. I'm like, so since when is soda and candy heart healthy?
Right.
I wasn't aware of that. I must have learned something new. Now they later backed down from that, but that shows you what we're up against when I'm fighting to protect Texans, fighting to protect the Make America Healthy Again agenda, and up against a lot of obstacles, but I'm fighting back. I'm winning. Of course, I did that with the ban on COVID vaccine mandates. That was my legislation. We have the strongest in the country, and that's fighting to allow you to make your own healthcare decisions where you should not be threatened with your job whether or not you get the COVID vaccine, right? And so I passed the bill last session before last in 2023, to make sure that you're not going to be threatened ever again in the state of Texas, and it will be your choice whether or not to get the COVID vaccine. I think most people will not get that, but it is up to you at this point, and the penalty is strong. It's $50,000 per occurrence.
Good. The Texas legislature opened up a can of worms when they decided they're going to legalize the cultivation of hemp. And let me finish this. Hemp growing, and then it became THC, and now we have these stores all over the place.
Yeah.
You go to Lubbock, go to San Angelo, where you name it. It's got to be multi-billion-dollar business with the vaping and the gummies and all that kind of stuff. Out here, we're an agriculture town, and I know all the farmers. So I go ask them, I say, so how much hemp are you growing? He goes, none.
Yeah.
We don't grow. We still grow cotton and soybeans and corn and whatever it is. We don't grow hemp. And I think the only people growing hemp are in Houston, Texas, in their garages underneath fluorescent lights. I think that's the only place where it's being grown. But how do you feel about
That's not what I think when I think of farmers. You know,
it's not a.
That's not a food and fiber industry.
They say
thing,
it's a farmer thing, but there's no farmers out here I know who are growing hemp. If someone is growing hemp, put in the comments down there that I grow hemp. That way I can go take a picture of it. But you'll be like a very. But anyway, how do you feel? I mean, Dan Patrick's had that war against THC. You had a lot of the Democrats and some of the Republicans are saying, well, we already let the cat out of the bag. We can't come back and make it illegal. Let's just regulate the hell out of it. Where do you stand on that?
So I'm for SB3 and SB5. And look,
what are those laws?
So these are the bills that would have prohibited THC, right? That was the Senate's bills that Charles Perry, so Senator Perry's bills.
That's our senator.
That passed the Senate, did not pass the House. I was supporters of those bills. And here's why. I'm a law and order guy. This stuff is already not legal. Anything above 0.3% THC is not legal. So, I mean, the majority of these products that we're seeing, it is illegal. And, running to be the top cop of the state to say that I'm just going to turn the other way and not follow certain laws and follow others, that's how the left works, right? They pick and choose. It's cafeteria style for the left. They pick something, put it on their tray, leave the rest. No, I'm sorry, you're supposed to enforce all of the law and all of our Constitution, and these are not federally legal products right now. So other thing is you can't measure intoxication. I've got 4 kids, and I don't want someone that's high on the highway. We can measure intoxication from alcohol, right? It maybe not be perfect, right? But they can measure it pretty quickly if you get pulled over. We can't do that with THC. So that's something that really concerns me as well. And they are targeting children. That was the biggest thing that got to me as I saw these little electronic vape pieces of equipment, and they had Minecraft on them, and they were colored. One of them had a video game on it. And this is targeting children, and it is extremely harmful to the next generation, and it does trigger schizophrenia and other mental disorders, things that we don't really fully understand, to be honest. And the problem with that is you can't turn a pickle back into a cucumber.
Right.
Once it's triggered, and so we can't get this wrong.
So you're saying once someone is hooked on this stuff, and of course, the THC is not like the pot we smoked in the 1979. It's very, very potent.
Strong. It's very strong.
But you're saying once that impacts your mental capacity, you can't bring it back?
There are certain people that we just don't know why, that it will trigger certain mental disorders, whether that's bipolar disorder or schizophrenia, and we don't really fully understand it. But once it happens, all we can do is treat those disorders. And it's really unfortunate, and of course others is very powerful. You think about this, where like there was one little bottle of gummies that we had in committee, and it had, I think, about 1,500 milligrams of THC in it. And you think about back in the day, you know, and the joint back in the day was 20, 30 maybe milligrams of THC. So I mean, the quantities are huge on this. And it really is something that the next generation is being targeted with, because I mean, they were packaged in like gummy worms, they were packaged in Doritos, they were packaged as candy, they were packaged as Rice Krispie treats, they were packaged as other like convenience store snack products that my kids would look attractive to them to buy. It looks like a candy or a chip.
I will say this: in San Angelo, Texas, the majority, like overwhelming majority of our murder cases involve marijuana. They say it's a peaceful drug, but majority of our cases, when we're covering the courts, involve something having to do with the marijuana trade, and it's a crazy thing. The other thing I'll say from a local perspective, and we're kind of discussing this, but I appreciate you going in and researching that when you're a senator. Our county jail, 25% at any given time of the inmates. We have 600 inmates, 500 to 600 inmates.
That's a lot.
25% of them, which is over 100 people, have some type of mental disorder requiring medication. And can you imagine how much those medications cost the county taxpayers?
A lot.
So there's cost, and I'm just showing you two examples there of the cost of that, with increased crime and also increased, I think, mental health. Now they'll say, well, those people, those 25%, they could be high on alcohol or what have you. But I think having two intoxicants legalized is probably too much for our county budgets and our city budgets to maintain the law enforcement. I mean, my back is only so strong to hold up the society. As a tax-paying a businessman and citizen, just like a lot of people that watch this show are. I mean, you can't allow people to destroy themselves and have us have to pay to pick up the pieces. And that's the biggest problem I have with legalization of THC. I'm sorry, I'm giving you all a big. Everyone in San Angelo is going to hate me on that, but I think it's a learned thing that from observation, seeing what's going on.
We have a lot of tragic stories out there. Unfortunately, there was a mom, that came to committee. I actually met her at the convention, the RPT, Republican Party Texas convention, and I mean, it was like a merit scholar, valedictorian. Her son just did really well, in K-12 and their ISD. I can't remember where it was, but and then he started taking THC. It triggered something, and he ended up committing suicide in front of a train. And it's just the stories like that, you don't want any other parent to go through. And at the end of the day, no one should really need a mind-altering substance like that to feel okay about themselves. And yes, it is not as physically addicting as alcohol, but that still doesn't make it good for kids or good for people that could be triggered with mental disorder. It's just the whole thing is turned into a mess for law enforcement, and we hear it again and again. They literally don't have enough equipment to measure these products if they're lawful, right? So they need liquid or gas chromatography. That's the way that they
one of the things
measure that.
One of the things that is an issue with law enforcement, I think, is the way it's classified. And I don't know if that's a federal classification or a state classification, but it's it'll send you to not a state jail felony, but a higher felony if you have possession of THC vape pens, because the liquid is, I can't remember, it's a penalty group 3 or 1 or whatever it is, and it sends it up to a higher level of if they could maybe knock that down a little bit. But the other problem is, when someone gets popped and they have the vape pens and the baggies and all that kind of stuff, they have to test it, send it off to the DPS lab for testing. And so it might be a month before they get the testing back. And so the guy's out on parole or out on bail the entire time waiting for his exact charges. And of course, now we have problems with, speedy trials, and you have to charge them with something if you're going to keep them locked up or on bail.
And we just don't have, all these people locked up over small quantities of marijuana or THC. I mean, you see in the news every day where they're letting murderers out, on no cash bail. I mean, that's happening in all the big cities, in all the big counties. And that's really the biggest problem we have to address is our penal code not being enforced.
Right.
And these DAs are getting elected by George Soros with his money. Happened in Harris County, happened in Travis County. There was a more moderate Democrat that was in office in both of those counties. they didn't like that criminals were getting prosecuted. George Soros's, I guess, organization that he funds didn't like that. So what did they do? They funded their woke progressive Democrat primary opponents and got someone elected. They're dismissing murder charges right and left. I mean, they're not even indicting people in time and having to let people out of jail.
And then someone else gets murdered or terribly harmed, and there's no accountability.
Well, there will be. I want to make sure that we remove those district attorneys from office because we have a tool to do that. It's a petition for removal. And they need to be held accountable for the lives that they're risking, and people are dead because of their choices. And law and order is something that's near and dear to my heart because we have to keep our families safe. That's one of the most basic functions of government is public safety. And the reason why it's so basic is our rights are from God, not government, and those God-granted freedoms of life, liberty, and property. Look, if you don't have public safety, someone could take your life, someone could take your liberty, and someone could take your property. So you literally cannot exercise your God-granted freedoms without public safety in Texas.
That was an excellent close to an excellent interview.
Well, thank you. Appreciate
Mayes
you.
Middleton, he's running for Texas Attorney General as a Republican. The Republican primaries in March, I guess.
March 3rd is
There
the
you go.
primary date. MaysMiddleton.com if you want to find out more about me. Check it out on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter as well.
And thank you for coming to San Angelo and talking to us.
Thank y'all for having me today. Love it. Texas's energy dominance, food and fiber, feels like home. This is the kind of stuff that made Texas great and why our ancestors moved here for opportunity. And they have that grit and persistence that I know is alive and well here in San Angelo.
And they still
today.
grow cotton.
They still grow cotton after all these years. Yeah, love it. Love it.
Back to you guys.
Thank you.